felt compelled to make this video because, much in the same way that the majority do not understand what constitutes rational ethics or a healthy diet, the majority of people doing exercise are doing it wrong. If you go to a gym today, you will observe illogical and counterproductive movements and activities that people do without reason, destroying their own bodies. The gym where I currently train is one client at a time, and I like it that way. But I primarily work out at my home gym, and that's the best experience of them all by far. Part 1 of this video will cover exercise in general, its definition, and why everyone of every age and every size should do it. Part 2 will cover problems with what is commonly called cardio, and Part 3 will be a breakdown of high-intensity exercise, its history, philosophy, and methods, and more importantly, why it is the most logical, safe, and efficient way to train. I would like for all of us vegan anti-natalists to be the healthiest we can be, so we can keep making logical arguments for many years to come. So if you're into cardio, weights, or not into exercise at all, or if you are obese or overweight, then this video may have some useful information for you. I've been lowering weights, slightly different philosophy than lifting weights, for many years, so I've learned a few things about exercise that I would like to share. When it comes to fitness YouTubers, I'm really only interested in the natural, drug-free, vegan strength trainers. I don't see what useful info a guy like Piana, the most popular bodybuilder on the internet, before he died that is, could give me. He was a meat-loving, overtraining steroid freak who ended up dead because of his lifestyle. I want no advice from him whatsoever, but at least he was honest about his drug use. If anyone watches Vegan Gains channel, then you know that most of the so-called natural bodybuilders like Kinobody are what durianrider calls fake natties, or fake naturals. They use steroids but don't disclose it to their audience because they want suckers to buy junk products from them in hopes that they too can get an unobtainable steroid body with protein powder. I want nothing from these frauds either. I think that Vegan Gains channel is good, but it's mostly about nutrition, which as a vegan I am on board with of course, but I don't agree with his training advice, and I'll get into that a little bit later. So we should start with the basics. What is exercise? Exercise, by its strictest definition, is a specific activity that stimulates a positive physiological adaptation to increase or maintain physical fitness. Physical fitness is your body's ability to do work without fatigue and to resist preventable disease and illness. And finally, health is a physiological state with an absence of disease or pathology. If done properly and safely, the benefits of exercising regularly include a healthy weight, regulating digestive health, building and maintaining healthy bone density, muscular strength and joint mobility, reducing surgical risks, and strengthening the immune system. Some studies indicate that exercise may increase life expectancy and overall quality of life. People who participate in moderate to high levels of physical exercise have a lower mortality rate compared to individuals who are not physically active. Exercise can also help with preventing aging by reducing inflammation in the body. But not all exercise is equal and will provide the above benefits. It has been suspected since ancient times that exercise provided health benefits. But of course, when the average life expectancy was 30, there was little reason to bother. The first scientific evidence did not come until the 20th century. A Scottish epidemiologist named Jerry Morris observed that bus conductors, workers who went up and down stairs all day on double-decker London buses, suffered far less heart attacks than the sedentary bus drivers they worked with. Another discovery by Morris was that exercise must be vigorous. There is still to this day the misconception that gardening or walking constitute exercise. Morris realized this, and he's certainly one of the most important figures in exercise science. Two other people are notable and worth mentioning. Kenneth Cooper published a book in 1968 called Aerobics, and from that book came the running craze, the cycling craze, and the aerobics craze that includes jazzercise, Taebo, step aerobics, cross-country skiing, and more. His belief in steady-state endurance work is still the dominant form of exercise advice most people follow today. Cooper believed that running was the best exercise one could perform for cardiovascular health, but Arthur Jones disagreed with Cooper. Cooper led everyone down a wrong turn, and sadly most of the world still follows his advice, to their own detriment. The physicist Max Planck once said that science advances one funeral at a time, and by that he meant that old theories die hard only when their supporters die off. Jones is dead, and Cooper still lives, along with his harmful ideas. However, Jones' discoveries are the more logical and scientifically inescapable. Eventually, they will overtake Cooper's concept of aerobic exercise to become the new standard. So who was Arthur Jones? Jones was the discoverer of the link between intensity and infrequency of effort and physical fitness, primarily in muscular strength. Similarly to the discoveries made by Morse, Jones arrived at his findings from observation. So Morse discovered the benefit of exercise, and Jones discovered the most efficient way to do it. Jones' first career was making documentary films in Africa, and he observed a gorilla doing a one-arm pull-up. That was the apple on the head moment where he saw the connection between strength and brief, intense movement. Lions and gorillas do not spend hours working out, yet they are tremendously strong. Their work is brief, infrequent, and most importantly, intense. Jones was an eccentric but brilliant generalist and would later become the inventor of weight training technology that is still some of the best used today. The MedX machines I use at my gym are Jones' inventions and are the most accurate tools for measuring strength. He founded the MedX and Nautilus exercise machine companies, both of which still exist. Nautilus would end up merging with Bowflex, a machine that was not designed by Jones, but it was based on principles he discovered. But I'll get into his innovations more in the third part of this video. One common misconception is that health and fitness have a direct scientific link. They don't. In fact, many, if not most, of the people performing exercise today are actually becoming unhealthier as a result. Government statistics show that at least 20 million Americans each year suffer injuries that resulted from exercise, fitness, and sports activities that require medical help. Look at one of the most popular running websites, Competitor, for example. Right at the top of the page, as one of the main headers, is an injury prevention tab. The second most popular article on the site is about injuries. It has often been said that the running hobby alone created the entire physical therapy industry. Many people believe that the activities they participate in are exercise, but they aren't. Walking, jogging, and yoga are activities. They are not exercise by the definition I used earlier. They are either inefficient at stimulating the body's metabolic adaptations to increase fitness and health, or they undermine the body's health by being done over and over again, too often causing injury. A problem with only doing cardio, and that's short for cardiovascular, meaning the heart and lungs, for weight loss is that fat-burning effects are short-lived. Once you stop pedaling or running, your body's metabolism returns to its normal state. So if cardio, which includes cycling, running, and swimming, is your go-to exercise, then you are forced to do more and more of it to keep seeing results, and that can lead to a reduction in muscle mass. The more muscle you lose, the lower your resting metabolic rate will be. Weight training, on the other hand, increases your metabolic rate, which causes the body to burn fat even after exercise is completed. So running and cycling will do little to build strength and size, and in fact will probably reduce muscular strength and size. But properly done strength training will also improve your cardio. There is a distinct difference between exercise and sports. CrossFit and racing are sports. They require special skills. Sports and games are not exercise, even though they involve exercise. I do not train like my wife does to compete in races. I train to build muscle for strength and fitness. That's it. When one is training, one should always have a clear and attainable goal in mind. This video actually started out as a response to a deleted Superhuman Dance video called Bodybuilding Sucks. But there's still enough in Superhuman Dance's other videos to still make my points. So first, let's examine Superhuman Dance and what he has to say about weight training.
And it's all about that cardio, man. That's what makes you feel good. Heart and lungs, centerpiece of fucking fitness, not your fucking bicep or back muscles. Those are the fucking centerpiece of fitness, motherfuckers. All right. Human beings aren't really meant to be jerking and herking weights, guys. I mean, come on, let's get real here. We evolved to get the fruit from the tree, get the fruit from the ground, get the fruit from the fucking bushes. You know, it's, you can build strength and stuff in isolated areas. The bench press fucking sucks. Isolated movement of just your chest muscles. Like, why the fuck would you do that, you know? It doesn't make it much sense to me. I don't know. I made this video about bodybuilding earlier because bodybuilding ultimately does not move your entire body. It doesn't make your heart and lungs pump substantially. And what I mean by substantially is like my Strava. Like, look at my Strava, the data. That is substantial movement. So, you know, like heart rate above 150, 160 for like 20, 40 minutes. You know, make sure that you, and obviously that's going to be different for different people. That's why I prefer a power meter. That way you can give you can test yourself. You can actually have consistency, logical consistency. I'm not gonna go easy on these fucking bodybuilding douche nozzles, because honestly, you guys have been. Every bodybuilder I've ever met in my entire life is a fucking retard when it came down to it. And they had no logic backing up their entire fucking fucktarded philosophy. That's why they're skillless douchebags.
Superhuman Dance's main reason for working out appears to be fat loss and overall fitness, which are good reasons. Like Freely and high-carb Piana, he was once obese. The good news is he can forget about those hours and hours of cycling. He can just lift weights once a week and lose even more fat. Of course, we as individuals often have different goals for exercising. His goal is to not be fat. I've never had a problem with obesity in my life, so my goal is to be strong because I'm short and slim. He's mentioned that he enjoys bike riding as an activity. I would suggest that in addition to his cycling, he train with weights once a week at high intensity to make up for the loss of bone density from cycling for hours and hours at a time. Cycling, being non-weight bearing, fails to maintain or strengthen bone density. Also, compared to other cardio machines like steppers, exercise bikes lead to fewer expended calories. Weight training is the single best exercise for health and fitness, hands down. Cycling is good, but not nearly as good as weight training. Proper weight training will also have the benefit of filling out the loose skin a previously overweight person had, so one can achieve a better overall attractive appearance. For me, even though it seems superficial, if you can make yourself more attractive, then why the hell wouldn't you do it? Now this is the part that people can't wrap their heads around. Most people, including most bodybuilders or strength athletes, do not realize that weight training done properly is also an aerobic exercise. Aerobic and cardio are synonymous in the fitness world and mean a workout for the circulatory system, the heart and lungs. The common delineation between aerobic and anaerobic exercise is that aerobic uses oxygen and anaerobic uses the muscles. Aerobic exercise is usually light activity that you can sustain over long periods of time, such as jogging. Anaerobic consists of bursts of activity for short periods of time, such as sprinting. The terms anaerobic and cardio tend to mean this long and slow style of endurance training. Muscle burns more fat than cardio alone ever could. Each pound of new muscle that you gain burns an extra 60 calories per day, even at rest, and a 10-pound muscle gain burns off almost 62 pounds of fat per year. As far as working your heart and lungs go, high-intensity weight training alone does a very good job of that, even without any specific cardio provided you're not resting too long between sets. Muscle is the secret weapon in the war against fat. It is natural and grows without drugs or expensive supplements, improves the look of your body, and gives you more energy. Muscle is considered to be active tissue, so even when you're sitting or sleeping, you're burning more calories than you would if you were less muscular. This comes down to the fact that a larger muscle contraction requires more energy than a smaller one does, even during lower intensity contractions. If it's weight loss and healthier after, then you should be lifting weights as your primary exercise. Aerobic exercise alone activates so few muscle fibers and it burns so few calories that it is a poor way to get rid of fat. 1 pound of fat can fuel 10 hours of continuous activity. And as soon as you stop the activity, the fat burning stops almost immediately. Superhuman Dance is into these expensive power meter things for bikes that measure energy output. It's used to guide training for a very specific sport, cycling or racing. That's a totally different thing than what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about exercise. Once your exercise becomes a sport, it's no longer exercise. I'm not into sports personally. My wife is into the sport of competitive long-distance running. Even if she was only competing against her previous times, it's still a competitive sport. She doesn't run 10 miles a day for health. It's an activity that she is obsessed with, for better or for worse. Cycling and running are not ideal exercises. They are sports, and if you want to participate in them, you have to train in a very specific manner. Cycling can contribute to bone loss in both men and women because it's not a weight-bearing activity like running. So cyclists should weight train for bone health. But I don't want this video to come across as being anti-cycling though, as I do it occasionally. I had a neurectomy performed in my right foot back in December, and because of that, I was off my feet and on crunches for a long time. To help get my wind back, I quickly added some high-intensity interval sessions on the stationary bike once a week. Bike riding can be a really fun way to enjoy the outdoors as well. It is safer and more efficient than running. So if you have a choice between the two, cycling is better for your health, but weight training is better than both cycling and running. Just watch out for automobiles when you're out on the road. We just had a cyclist killed a few miles from our house this month. One of Superhuman Dance's criticisms of weight training is that people jerk or throw heavy weights around. I never, ever jerk weights around. One unfortunate exercise trend that's still hanging around like a bad smell is called CrossFit. It's full of jerky, explosive movements just because they're flashy. Look at this idiot attempting a negative rep with a headstand. They don't properly isolate or control their movements. Using momentum completely defeats the purpose of an exercise. Doing a push-up on your head is stupid and dangerous. So in strength training, there are two primary methods: high volume, low intensity, and low volume, high intensity. And you don't even need to think of this as weight training. It's really just resistance training. No weights are necessary to build muscle. You can use rubber bands, hydraulics, body weight, or resistance provided by another person. Bowflex is a good example of strength training without weights. So let me explain briefly what high intensity and high volume are. The traditional way people lift weights is called high volume and has long been promoted by Joe Weider and Arnold Schwarzenegger. He uses the same philosophy of Kenneth Cooper: more is better. The more miles you can run, the better. The more weights you can lift and more repetitions you can perform, the better. I can only speculate at how many people have wasted years of their life in the gym following this advice, overtraining and lessening their progress, and worst of all, getting seriously hurt. The only weight training injury I ever sustained was using this method. I started out as a volume lifter because that's how I was taught by my first trainer. You will find volume protocols in the muscle magazines and on Vegan Gains channel. It basically entails performing a certain number of sets and a certain number of reps. When those numbers are reached, the work stops. Volume trainers often use what is called the split system to break up their workouts throughout the week. For instance, Vegan Gains says he does 4 chest pressing days a week, so the other days he works the legs and other parts of the body. High intensity, on the other hand, is performing one set of maximum intensity to failure while accentuating the negative. This means you want to do 8 to 12 reps until you cannot physically perform the positive part of the exercise, even if a gun were held to your head. Then you want to further exhaust the muscle with forced reps, negative reps, static holds, or drop sets. Intensity is defined as the effort required to lift or lower the weight. It's a percentage of your momentary ability. Arthur Jones' original formulation for high intensity, which he called proper strength training, was first published in 1970 and is still the basis for all high intensity protocols today. They are as follows. Perform one set of each exercise to muscular failure. Work each muscle group no more than twice a week. Move slowly and smoothly during the repetition. Perform 8 to 12 repetitions for optimal increases in muscle strength and endurance. A volume trainer may spend 2 to 3 hours at the gym 6 days a week. A high-intensity trainer is in and out in around 20 minutes, once or twice a week. I admit the time-saving advantage of high-intensity training was a huge turn-on for me. I used to spend almost 3 hours working out. I would have a movie on in the background, or I'd take reading breaks between sets, and it would be a half-a-day commitment. Now I am laser-focused, I don't fuck around in between sets, I just do it with maximum effort. That is probably one of the main reasons, if not the main reason, why most people prefer volume training. It's easier and more relaxed. More is more makes more sense to them than less is more. But volume trainers are not just wasting valuable time, they're also missing out on some important benefits. High-intensity exercise provides the benefit of glycogen depletion and reloading, as well as lowering the risk for cardiovascular disease. Steady-state activity can decrease the body's ability to store glycogen, thus increasing the risk for developing insulin sensitivity, and that increases the risk for coronary disease. Cardio exercises are aerobic only, and so use oxidative metabolism. This means more inflammatory free radicals are produced when they could have just done an exercise that was brief and intense instead. Your body has a limited capacity to increase its antioxidants and control free radicals. The truth is, any increase in muscular demand increases the involvement of your cardiovascular system. In HIIT, that's just the acronym for high-intensity training, there is no rest between sets. Even 10 seconds is too long if you want to fatigue your muscles as much as possible. The reason we only do one set to failure is because that is all it takes to signal to your muscles that they need to grow and adapt. After you have maximally stimulated the targeted muscle with one all-out set, doing additional sets is not necessary because you've already created the stimulus for growth.
I just wanted to share this footage of me hitting a 315-pound 1-rep max bench. I'm really proud of this. I'm finally making some serious progress on my bench, and it feels good. This new routine I'm on is working great. I'm pressing 4 days a week, and it's just really heavy weight with also a lot of high volume. I think I'm doing about 26 total sets per week.
People who do HIIT Do not worry about dick-wagging stats like how much they bench press this one time for one rep. If the bench press is towards the end of your workout and not at the beginning, then you're going to lift less anyways because of fatigue. 26 sets per week for just one body part is way too much. In HIIT, we prefer machines to free weights or bodyweight exercises. For free weights, instability compromises taking a muscle to failure. You don't want focus to be lost on balance and coordination. The idea that free weights are needed to work secondary support muscles is nonsense. Slow, controlled, isolated movements is what we are after.
Flies or any kind of variation like dumbbell flies, cable flies, incline flies, pec deck flies, they are all 100% fucking useless, and for one very basic reason. They do not allow you to perform an adequate amount of volume at an appropriate intensity to cause muscle growth.
Vegan Gains doesn't believe in isolation exercises because he doesn't understand the difference between intensity and volume, and the difference between weight and resistance. Isolation movements are ideal as they target the muscle you want to work, rather than a compound movement which works multiple muscles at the same time. When you work multiple muscles in one exercise, like a bench press that works triceps and pectorals, some muscle groups will reach failure before others, so you have to use isolation movements to fully exhaust the targeted muscles. Vegan Gains also believes in the bulking up myth. Putting on a bunch of fat to build muscle is counterintuitive. No amount of fatty tissue will increase muscular size. You have to wonder if guys who practice this ever consider the logic of it. It makes no sense. Any unnecessary fat is always going to be a handicap. The less fat you have, better you will perform. That's why elite athletes have little to no body fat. High-intensity training is similar to circuit training in that circuit training is a protocol of several exercises performed back-to-back without resting in between. The main difference is that circuit training is not usually done at high intensity. Studies at Baylor University and the Cooper Institute show that circuit training is the most efficient way to enhance cardiovascular fitness and muscular endurance. Arthur Jones first coined the terms positive and negative training. Prior to that, they were referred to as concentric and eccentric muscle action. He thought that positive and negative made it easier to understand. Arthur Jones wanted us to think not in terms of how much we can lift, but in terms of how much we can lower. I was originally going to title this video, Why I Lift, but I wanted to emphasize that I don't lift weights, I lower weights. I work the negative. This is probably the biggest mistake I see in weight training videos on YouTube. Just look at some of these clips. They're just letting gravity do all the work and wasting their time. Of the concentric and eccentric, it is the eccentric, the negative, that is stronger. You can look at the concentric or positive movement to merely be a warm-up for the negative part of the rep. Once a lifter reaches failure on the positive movement, if someone helps him into the static position, he'll still be able to hold the weight and then slowly lower it even though he was unable to push it up. This is the value of working the negative. When you slowly lower a weight that's heavier than anything you could move concentrically, you'll induce more microtrauma within your muscles than you can with any other training technique. The goal is to fully exhaust the muscle, and reaching concentric failure is not total failure. The negative and static can still do more work. I still want to incorporate the positive movement into my protocol though, because that's where you get the cardio benefits. Also, to do a fully negative workout, you would need a workout partner or specialized equipment. Here are some examples of how I work the negative to fully exhaust the muscle. So this is called a forced rep. I'm only doing one arm at a time on this cable machine so that I can use my free arm to force the positive movement when the other arm can no longer do the exercise alone. Then I let the exhausted arm finish the negative part of the rep. This is called a drop set. I've already exhausted myself on the previous weight, so I drop some plates off and do it again. I get exhausted again, so I drop the weight further to get at least one more rep. High-intensity interval training is the high-intensity philosophy applied to cardio exercises like running and cycling. There is no real equivalent to working the negative in cardio. The intensity comes from sprinting. Here I'm doing some high-intensity interval sprints, cramming in 2 hours worth of bike riding and 20 minutes of hard work. I will put a link in the description for the video I like to watch while training on the bike. Since sprinting intervals have to be timed correctly, it's simply easier to watch a class on YouTube, so I don't have to use a stopwatch. Even though you may want to die by the end, isn't a 20-minute workout preferable to 2 hours of time that you can never get back? It certainly is to me. Since the exercise bike is a non-weight-bearing activity, it does not help to strengthen or protect your bones. According to a 2012 study published in BMC Med, even at sports competition levels, cycling does not provide any benefit to bone health. When comparing multiple indoor cardio machines for energy expenditures at the same effort level, the exercise bike leads to fewer expended calories than other machines. So if you still want to do cardio at home, a stair stepper would be a superior exercise to a stationary bike. With my injured foot though, a bike was safe for me and it's a piece of equipment I already owned. Now I'll cover a few vegan fitness YouTubers to highlight examples of improper exercise technique. Even in the bodybuilding community, a lot of men and women are completely ignorant about high-intensity training. Vegan Gains, Cory McCarthy, Robert Cheek, none of those guys talk about it. By the way, when Superhuman Dan said that bodybuilding sucks, he is not wholly inaccurate. I use the term strength training or weight training and not bodybuilding for a reason. I talked about activities that are not exercise earlier. Bodybuilding is not a sport, as many of its practitioners claim. It is a beauty contest. A beauty contest of steroid freaks, most of whom never even make it to old age because they have so irreparably destroyed their health. So I do agree with the Superhuman Dance that pro bodybuilding as it is in 2018 does suck. A lot of their training and diet advice sucks too. So the term bodybuilding should not be a catch-all word for strength training. For instance, my personal trainer is a middle-aged woman who lifts and lowers weights, but she is far from being a bodybuilder. All you need to know about free running is that it's stupid. Very stupid and very dangerous. And all you need to know about yoga is that it's crap. You don't need yoga or stretching routines. Strength training has been shown to improve the range of movement far more than control subjects who did not do strength training. And again, this tends to go against traditional common sense, but stretching does not increase flexibility. It is not possible to increase flexibility, only enhance it. Yoga just pulls the muscles and joints apart by their connective tissue. That ain't healthy. Yoga practitioners are just injuring themselves. When I was involved in the martial arts, stretching was a huge part of warming up. The instructors thought that by forcing their joints into painful positions like with this torture device, they could return their bodies to a state like when they were teenagers. They didn't understand that it was easier to do splits as a child because your bones were smaller. With bigger bones comes restrictions on how far they can move in their sockets. This is why so many martial artists pull their groins and have to have hip and knee replacement surgery. I will never forget my most memorable sparring tournament in my Taekwondo class. I was up against a gentleman in his 40s, and I was about 16 at the time. We were tied with 2 points apiece, and I could tell he really did not want to lose to a teenager. I can still see what happened next in slow motion. He pulled a Danielson on me by jumping into the air and kicking me right in the side of the head with a reverse roundhouse kick. I didn't even see it coming. I was like, what the fuck just happened? He was very proud of the kick, and he won that match, but that roundhouse was the last kick he ever threw in his training career that I know of. He severely injured his groin doing it, and he was all done after that. He would come to class just to watch, but he never participated again. So I felt terrible about that because I wanted to win really badly as well, and I shouldn't have been so competitive over a stupid plastic trophy. It wasn't worth it. Yoga and stretching damages the body. It does not enhance it, so stay away from yoga. However, self-defense is a skill that's always worth learning, but dojo time shouldn't be your primary source of exercise. Tim Sheaf has made a career out of free running, so his injury risk, you could say, is more worthwhile to him, but the problem is that idiots will watch his videos and try free running, a very, very dangerous activity. He also goes on TV and says that the earth is flat, so he's really one of those people out there who gives vegans a bad rep. I'd prefer if he just closed all his social media accounts immediately and went away.
A recent paper that compared workouts consisting of 1, 3, and 5 total sets per muscle group demonstrated that the higher the volume, the more muscle growth accumulated. In fact, the 5-set study group experienced significantly better results than the 1 or the 3-set groups.
I discussed Cory McCarthy in a previous video, but now I just want to look at his training advice. He is a man of contradictions. On one hand, he gets that holocausting animals for taste pleasure is wrong. He's a full-blown, deluded natalist who thinks that he can outbreed all of the inferior brown people. Likewise, he seems to take training very seriously, more seriously than Vegan Gains, yet he does a stupid volume approach, meaning he's wasting hours upon hours every week doing work at low intensity that could have been done in 20 minutes at high intensity. Again, you can see that he is not working the negative at all, he's just letting gravity do it for him. The problem with McCarthy's study here is the problem with all of these studies that high-volume lifters use as evidence, and that's that the intensity of the exercise is not even mentioned once. So obviously doing more of a low intensity exercise will get you better results, but the pertinent information is that high intensity, low volume is best and most effective. Vanessa Espinosa is a well-known female vegan bodybuilder. I have to mention her because she's an example of personal trainers making promises without disclosing how they got their results. Clearly she gets her results by injecting male hormones into her body. That should be the very first thing on her website. Step 1, take lots of steroids. But of course she won't do that because she wants to sell personal training advice, not drugs. You can see in this video that her workouts are bullshit calisthenics anyways. She's in a room full of much safer machines, but she chooses to do these explosive push-ups for no good reason except that they're flashy. A long-distance competitive athlete might not want too much muscle because they need to be light and lean. This is true. However, some weight training must be included in a long-distance cyclist routine because of the loss of bone density. One short, high-intensity weight training session per week is all that is required. There are effective HIIT workouts that are only 5 minutes of very intense training. I'll include a link in the description box. Durianrider is an overtraining fanatic. He will ride a bike for an entire day and he runs marathons regularly. He believes the more the better, but do not be shocked if he uploads a video one day saying his knees are destroyed. You often hear anecdotal evidence from endurance athletes. But I've been running for 20 years and nothing went seriously wrong. Longtime smokers say the same thing. And to that I say, just wait.
But so there's been these, rash of marathon deaths that have runners on edge. It's interesting to notice that 50% of the deaths in a marathon, and I went back up to say, deaths in the marathon are not the big problem. That's sort of like the tip of the iceberg. The bigger problem is this is not ideal for cardiovascular health or for longevity. This is kind of like the obvious catastrophe, and by the way, 50% of the deaths of these long distance races, like full distance triathlons or marathons, paradoxically occur in the last mile, the last few minutes of the race. I haven't really figured out why that is, but it probably has something to do with cardiac fatigue and then a burst of catecholamines, adrenaline towards the end of it, and it triggers an arrhythmia. But in any event, one of my good friends, like a lot of my social network is composed of people who overexercise. But anyway, one of them is a girl named Megan.
Ryan from Happy Healthy Vegan is a runner, so of course he had to make an injury video because injuries are simply a part of that sport. He says running is cheap. Well, it's not cheaper than strength training actually. You need good shoes. You need good weather. You need a treadmill if you live in a cold state like Michigan. But you can do push-ups and squats anywhere. So resistance training wins that contest. Ryan lives in LA. Try running in Michigan in January. Not so cheap and easy. Lift Vegan is another vegan health and fitness channel, and it shows the problem with YouTube, and that is that anyone can make videos, even kids. Lift Vegan is a teenager giving fitness and health advice, and while she is much more educated than I was at 18, she still doesn't know what the fuck she's into. She's all over the place recommending yoga, weight training, running, cycling. Her workouts are barely better than lifting the remote control. They're not going to lead to good conditioning or any health benefits because she's just not using enough weight or intensity. She also said something that I hear many YouTubers say, just move. You shouldn't move without a purpose in mind. Just randomly running around doing parkour or calisthenics could injure your body more than help it. So I would recommend not moving unless it's going to be a well thought out exercise that is based on scientifically backed recommendations.
Exercise doesn't have to be serious, it doesn't have to be boring, it can be fun and beautiful and spiritual and awakening and enlightening, and just move your body and listen to your body, Walking is a very, very amazing exercise, just moving your body, getting that energy up, getting your...
Walking is too low intensity to provide any muscular or cardiovascular benefit. You might as well just stay home unless you really like walking for pleasure. John Venus is easily the best looking vegan bodybuilder on YouTube. He is genetically gifted and his training videos demonstrate excellent form and technique. He has even made videos about high intensity interval training. He still seems to stick to a standard volume approach to weight training, but at least he is actually working the negative. And he seemed like a decent guy until I clicked on his latest video. So disappointing. I made a perfectly reasonable comment to this disgusting video, and this was his reaction. So it's laugh out loud funny that he just sentenced a human being who didn't ask to be here to the death penalty. Great, that's just really great. That shows how seriously he takes playing God with someone else's life. This just makes me sick. Almost 2,000 thumbs up. What the fuck is wrong with people? I really hate breeders parading as ethical vegans. They don't have a fucking clue. And speaking of clueless vegan breeders, Thunder Bay personal trainer Logan Blake, of all the people I've covered thus far, seems to be the most genetically similar to me. I will never have Vegan Gains arms or Cory McCarthy's traps, as genetics is the #1 determining factor for how much your muscles can grow. So Blake is a personal trainer apparently. I assume he works at a gym. I also assume that he spends hours working out multiple days a week, as he would have to, as he's using a volume approach with low intensity. I work out for a half an hour, once a week, sometimes twice a week. That's it. As you can see here, Blake is not working the negative at all. He's tossing weights around, performing static holds without reason, and participating in harmful CrossFit garbage. Such a waste. He works out like an idiot, and I feel bad for his clients. I get the feeling that when Superhuman Dan said that bodybuilding sucks, he was referring to Logan Blake. He gives fitness and veganism a bad name. I have been showing clips of a home high-intensity workout during this video. I also wanted to show taking one set to failure on the best equipment available to me, the MedX Leg Press. You can see my trainer adjusting the machine a bit as I perform the exercise. You don't want your legs to completely lock out, but have a continuous movement between the positive and the negative. You don't want to give your muscles time to rest. You want them to be under load the entire time. As you should be able to tell, this set is hard, very hard, as it has to be. No pain, no gain, as the saying goes. I decided to see a personal trainer because I've been doing HIIT for years, but only from books and videos. I wanted to have someone coach me on the equipment this style of training was designed for. The Super Slow Zone also does what its name says, the super slow version of high intensity developed by Ken Hutchins. I've been using Arthur Jones' recommendations of 4 seconds on the positive movement and 4 seconds on the negative for years, but my trainer has me doing 10 seconds on both the positive and the negative part of the rep with no pause at the static. She often has me pause halfway through the last negative when I can barely hold the weight. It's torture, but these have been some of the best workouts in my life. It's always nice to have someone present to push you and help you get the most out of a workout. If you can find a gym that has them, the best machine brands are Nautilus, MedX, and Hammer Strength. All of these machines are based on Arthur Jones principles, and the big difference between them and a standard exercise machine is called variable resistance. One of Jones' innovations was to use a cam instead of a pulley. This oblong cam allows the resistance to vary along the range of movement. Before Jones designed his machines, he would hang chains from a barbell so that the weight would be the heaviest where the muscle is strongest and lighter where the muscle is weakest. Anyone who has ever lifted weights knows that you are weaker at the beginning of a repetition. So to accommodate variable resistance at home, you have to get a little creative, as MedX and Nautilus machines go for around $5,000 a piece. I use these rubber resistance bands to provide variable resistance on bench press and barbell curls. There's a new type of machine that looks to be a significant technological improvement to training with weights, the ARX. It uses computer-controlled resistance, so you never have to select your weight. The computer will compensate and give appropriate resistance. It's pretty cool. Sadly though, these machines are hard to find and you can't even buy them, they are rentals only. But if you come across a gym that has one, I would definitely recommend using it. It appears to be the ultimate way to work the negative. So in summary, benefits of high-intensity training are: shorter workout times allows the exerciser more free time and causes one to be more motivated to work out. Intense intermittent physical activity results in increased metabolic rate, expedited release of fat stores, and increased release of fatty acids to be used as fuel. Decreased inflammation, improved insulin levels, and reduced cortisol secretion. The mainstream is slowly starting to pay attention, 50 years after Jones' first article was published. When I was at the hospital visiting my mom recently, I saw this flyer about a study involving high-intensity cycling and diabetes. The research is quite clear now that Arthur Jones was right, and high intensity is the only proper way to exercise, just as negative utilitarianism is the only proper way to do utilitarianism. It just makes the most logical sense. Exercise cuts your risk for dementia in half. After seeing my grandmother and mother go through that, it's more than worth it to me, especially when it only takes 20 minutes a week to do it. If you would like to know more, I will have links to studies, videos, and some books for further reading in the description. 3 of the most famous studies and experiments regarding high-intensity training are the Colorado experiment, the West Point experiment, and the McMaster studies. For books, I would recommend Body by Science by John McGuff and John Little, especially if you like to read about all of the scientific data. And then for a more relaxed reading, I would recommend If You Like Exercise, Chances Are You're Doing It Wrong by Gary Bannister. That's Arthur Jones there on the cover. And that's a great title because real exercise isn't supposed to be fun. It hurts. Your body is going into fight or flight mode, essentially panicking, and that's what forces it to grow. Then any book by Ellington Dardenne is good, as he has a very approachable style and has been involved with high intensity in Arthur Jones since the 70s. I'll also link to the articles that started it all, Arthur Jones' Nautilus Bulletins, which are available online. Like Jones, I don't care for weakness, and I especially hate the stereotype of the weak vegan. We need more vegan strength trainers. Muscles are what produce human movement, so it only makes sense to prioritize exercises that make them stronger and stay away from ones that make them weaker. I really despised being a weak, skinny kid growing up. Training is my way of saying fuck you to nature. I can trick this body into growing twice as strong in a safe environment for exactly the amount of time it takes to stimulate growth. No more and no less. If you have any questions about training or anything I said in this video, please feel free to leave a comment. Thanks for watching, and keep making those vegan, antinatalist, and negative gains.